Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Football Talk. I am your host, and we are going to kick off the day with Hawk Talk. And we got a lot of submissions for this week, so I appreciate that. This segment is really directed by you. So, any questions that you have, you can send me those, and it'll help direct the show. And that's whether you send it to us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. We will try and include as many of them in the show as we can. This segment is brought to you by Millhead's Barbershop there in Pioneer Square. If you want to have the best in the West, they're the place to go. All right, so let's kick this show off. After watching the game, the Hawks really dominated most of that game. It was pretty impressive, especially on the defensive side. Outside of that Tyler Lockett fumble right there inside the 5, probably could have had the Giants held to 7 points for the day. So the first question that I got was the improvements on defense. And it has been a large jump from week 6 to week 8. By the end of week 6, it was the worst run defense in the league, and it wasn't even close. They were giving up over 150 yards a game, or just at 150 yards a game. And then they go into the Chargers. They jumped out to an early lead and held the Chargers to 53 team rush yards. But because they were playing from behind, I didn't put a lot of stock in that. And so I was curious what they do against the Giants, especially since they have Saquon Barkley, who's been averaging 100 yards a game this year. And as bad as the defense, the Seahawks run defense had been thus far, that was going to be the real test. And so going through the game, they held Barkley to 53 yards and held the entirety of the Giants rushing attack to 78. So that is a huge step forward in run defense. The pass defense was still pretty solid. But yeah, to answer that, the run defense was the biggest improvement week over week, especially the last 2 weeks put together. If you add both of the totals together, it's less than they've been giving up in each game every week prior. So the biggest questions that I've been getting are what to do with Geno. And so should he start beyond this season? I feel like if his gameplay stays the same throughout the season, I mean, you have to. He's been just playing out of his mind. Hasn't been putting up crazy yardage, but he's protected the ball. There's no reason to move on from him with the gameplay that we're seeing. Now, the question is because it's a 1-year contract that he's on, what should we pay him? And so this is where it gets kind of interesting, because I don't see you paying him more than 25, 27 million, and mostly because this is the only year on his resume that has looked this good. And so there's not a big enough body of work to want to pay him top dollar. So I would say if he wants to get more than that, probably let him test out the market. You do still have Locke. Now, obviously, we don't see what's happening in practice, so maybe Locke isn't coming along quite as well as maybe everyone would think. But Geno's late enough in his career that if he wants to go chase that money, I mean, you kind of have to let him. I don't think the Seahawks would sign him for big money. Someone else suggested that they could potentially franchise tag him, and they absolutely could. They could do one of the unrestricted franchise tags, and that would allow somebody to still try and trade for him. So if you could pick up like a 1 or a couple of 2s or something like that, it might make it worth it. But that's a huge question mark. I don't know that Geno would be going for that top dollar yet anyway. But if they could re-sign him for, maybe a 2-year deal, 3-year deal at roughly 25 million a year, I would absolutely pull the trigger on that, just based on the way that he's been playing. And then that allows you to either groom Locke or maybe move Locke and draft a quarterback. But if they're happy with what they're seeing out of Locke in practice, then all of a sudden those first draft picks of the year may be better spent with an edge rusher or, something to that effect to help that defensive side of the ball. Let's see. If they do move on, do I think they would start Locke? I don't. Not based on what we've seen so far. If they full on just let him walk, then I don't know that you have another option. There's a decent quarterback class, but I haven't seen it. I haven't been as impressed as everybody made this particular quarterback class out to be. So maybe it was just the hype skewing my vision of it, but I don't know that I would pull the trigger on a quarterback based on what it is we have. And then how would I rate the first half of the season? Well, I have to give them an A because I was expecting, a D. I had them coming into this season. I had them as a 7-game win team. So a bit higher than most other people. A lot of people had them somewhere between 3 and 4 wins for the season. I had them at 7. And I do feel like they're going to outperform that. I think they're going to be probably the favored team in the next 3 games in a row. So there's some real potential to, start to separate themselves from the rest of the division. And in that note, if we enter the bye week, 7-3, Arizona 3-7, Rams 5-5, Niners 5-4. Do I think the division would be ours? I don't. This division is gonna start figuring out what's going on. The Rams are a bit more of a question mark. They really got beat up on Sunday, and so I wasn't too impressed with that. But the rest of the division, I think, is going to start coming along. And then if the Hawks slip later, could they still win the division? Yeah, I think this division is kind of anybody's at the moment. Nobody's far and away looking like they're the team to beat. The Niners defense, has been one of the best in the league, and then they added CMC. So they have a lot of toys to play with. So if they can get some quality quarterback gameplay, then the Niners will be right there. Again, the Rams are a little bit more of a question than I thought they were going to be. And the Cards are more or less kind of where I thought they would be. They have a lot of talent, but they kind of self-sabotage, not intentionally, but there's a lot of mistakes that hold them back. Should Pete be in the running for Coach of the Year? I think he has to be at this point, especially since they've already won more than what just about everybody thought they were going to win. So I feel like he has to be in that conversation, especially going and beating the Giants, because obviously that was the other coach that really had the best chance. So I feel like Pete is definitely in that conversation, especially now. This one has been making me laugh. Geno for Comeback Player of the Year. I really don't understand how he should win Comeback Player of the Year. It's not like he was injured or had something that was holding him out. Like, he just didn't have a starting job. So, that was a performance-based thing. So I don't know that that's really a comeback player. There was nothing holding him back. I guess if he wins it, cool, but I don't really get why he would be the comeback player. It was just a lack of opportunity, not necessarily that anything was keeping him from being this guy before. Pete getting the flag and then having the ref call it on the Mariners, that was hilarious to me. I guess that gets assessed in April. I don't know. I don't know that I've ever heard a ref call out a baseball team for a penalty, but it was hilarious. So I'll give him that at least. Is Geno an MVP candidate? So this one is interesting to me because he's playing well, but I really don't see him as an MVP candidate. Some of it is the stats just aren't there, right? Because guys like Mahomes and Allen exist in the league, right? So those guys are throwing for so many yards every week, and the Hawks are a very balanced team. You know, they tend to run just as many plays as they pass, and a lot of Geno's passes, you know, they're not necessarily for tons of yards, right? They are, you know, kind of mid-range, longer range passes, but you know, it's not that he's throwing the ball 48 times a game. He's throwing somewhere between 25 and 30. So he's just not going to have the stats that what a typical MVP quarterback would have. So I don't think that he's really in that conversation. The other end of that is there's so much just preconceived notions about Geno as a player. And at the end of the day, the MVP is a voting process. So because he's not going to have the best stats and it's, you know, being voted on, I don't think it's the sexy vote. So it's probably going to be either Allen or Mahomes. And that's despite the fact that he's leading in completion percentage. He's third in passer rating, third in touchdown to interception ratio, and he's fourth in QBR. So, I mean, he is playing extremely efficient football. He's just not going to have the passing touchdowns probably, and he's probably not going to have just the yardage that generally goes with a quarterback as an MVP. Plus, with how well Walker is running, you know, then there starts to be the question of whether or not he's the MVP of his own team. So I don't think that he gets that. That being said, I do think that he gets Pro Bowl nods for sure. It may even end up with some All-Pro nominate or, you know, votes. But I would bet if this kind of gameplay happens, he's a Pro Bowler for sure. Which, man, that's awesome for Geno. So I hope that comes together, even though there's not a real Pro Bowl game this year. They're playing flag football, which, you know, at the end of the day is probably actually going to be more competitive than the garbage game that they've been putting on the field for the last 10 years. But so yeah, no, I hope he does make it to the Pro Bowl, but I don't think he's going to be a real MVP candidate. Not to say that he doesn't get a vote or two, but I don't think he has a real shot at winning. Do the Seahawks make any moves before the trade deadline today? Historically, no. And I don't know that they have anything that's on the market that they could really use. Like there was a couple of linebackers that might have been enticing, but the things that they need, primarily on that defensive line, I don't think anything was really truly available that wasn't going to be extremely expensive. And with having 2 first-round picks, one within the top 10, and then a couple of second-round picks, those are things they can address in the draft. So I don't imagine them selling the farm today to go get something that may or may not increase gameplay a ton, especially with the growth that the defense has had, primarily on that, you know, on the line. So I don't think they make any moves, and historically they don't. So yeah, I don't foresee that changing this season. Do we move on from Penny? He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, and I believe they do. There's no real reason to bring him back. He hasn't played a full season since not even his rookie year. So I figure this offseason they let him walk. You know, it's unfortunate. He was a hard runner, and when he was healthy, it looked good. But, you know, he hasn't played more than 10 games in a season since he came into the league, or since his rookie season, I should say. So I feel like you have to move on from him. And then a similar question, do we move on from Jamal Adams? You can't. He has too much guaranteed money still. So he's on contract through 2025, and his guaranteed money, I believe, is into 24. So there's probably some restructuring you could do, but he's going to be on the team next year for sure. So I don't really see them trying to move anything. He's not going to have any kind of trade value. He's been hurt so much the last few years. So at this point, he's on our team, and hopefully we can get a full season out of him. But yeah, I mean, at this point, we're pretty much, whether he plays for us or not, we're eating that contract. So you might as well keep him on the team. So no, I think that one we pretty much stay where it is. Maybe at the end of the 24 season, we can restructure and make his contract make a little more sense. But as far as going into next year, he should still be on the team. What do I think of the Lockett fumble? You know, I don't read too much into it. I mean, he's had a couple of fumbles, and he definitely hadn't looked good in the special teams play. But, you know, that was just a really good play by Giants cornerback Jackson. He came in, he got his hand inside under the ball, and as he spun Lockett to the ground, was able to get the ball out. You know, I can't really hate on Lockett too much for that. He had both arms on it. It was just a really good play. So was it unfortunate to see inside the 5-yard line? Yeah, of course, but I don't put a lot of stock in it. And then, of course, the rise of the rookie class. Now, this has been impressive because I don't think Pete and John have had this good of production out of their rookie draft class than, you know, back when they got Sherman and everybody. So this is so encouraging to see, especially the level of growth that's happening week to week. You know, that we're seeing penalties go down, we're seeing production go up. You know, the tackles are playing amazing. You know, the DBs are locking things down. So they're doing as good as you could expect. Obviously, there's some points where you can see some confusion or something like that. But again, they're rookies, right? So those plays are going to happen. So the best part about that is when they're playing good, they're playing really good. And so soon as they start to get some of those mistakes out of the way, this will be a really solid secondary. And as they start to address, you know, the defensive line and stuff, I mean, this defense should be, you know, a fringe top 10 defense in the next couple of years. So the rookie class has been awesome, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball as well. The tackles are awesome. Interior line is really coming together. That was the biggest concern early in the year was, you know, the tackles immediately jumped in and were balling out, but the interior line was a little bit suspect. And so seeing that coming together, getting better rushing lanes for Walker. And then, of course, Walker as a rookie is absolutely balling out. He has looked amazing. So, I mean, they have to be ecstatic with the production they're getting out of most of their draft picks from this last season. And then, of course, with so many good draft picks moving into this next offseason, man, this is going to be quite the team. So yeah, that wraps us up for our Hawk Talk today. And make sure you like, subscribe, and send us the questions again on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we will try to answer as many of them in our next segment next week. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your week.